Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at The Guardian by Abraham Cowley. We are in 1641. It's the 12th of March, 1641, and at Trinity College, Cambridge. This is being performed before His Highness Prince Charles. So that's it's a good year for that, because as far as the modern canon is concerned, it's 1642, and things go wrong for the monarchy this year. I think it's fair to say. So, however, this is a comedy, so I'm sure they will get some laughs in the meantime. It's quite a chunky play, as things which are slightly more private end of the theatrical spectrum tend to be. So, without further ado, reading today, Tabytha and Puny is...
Hello, Greg. It's Greg. Typecast as ever.
Reading Lucia and Servant is...
Afternoon, it's Connor.
Reading Dogrel, and also some playtext is... reading Blade today is...
Captain Blade, if you don't mind, and Covent Garden.
Reading Young Truman is...
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm here. I'm trying not to make any crime references because I don't know that much about true crime, but I'm here.
Reading...
Maybe that is the true crime.
Reading Widow and Old Truman is...
Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm coming to you from the Northwestern United States.
Reading Prologue and Aurelia is...
Ronald in the English Midlands.
And reading Cutter today is...
Sarah Blake, coming to you from The Hague.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions and generally trying to keep everything ticking over. Tickety-boo is the hope. So, without further ado, we're going to start with the prologue, and then we'll run straight on into Act 1, Scene 1.
Who says the times do learning disallow? 'Tis false. 'Twas never honoured so as now. When you appear, great prince, our night is done. You are our morning star and shall be our sun. But our scene's London now, and by the rout we perish if the Roundheads be about. For now no ornament the head must wear, no bays, no mitre, not so much as hair. How can a play pass safe when we know Cheapside Cross falls for making but show? Our only hope is this, that it may be a play made pass too, made extempore. Though other arts poor and neglected grow, they'll admit poetry, which was always so. Besides, the muses of late times have been sanctified by the verse of Master Prynne. But we condemn the fury of these days and scorn as much their censure as their praise. Our muse, blessed prince, does only on you rely, would gladly live, yet not refuse to die. Accept our hasty zeal, a thing that's played ere 'tis a play, and acted ere 'tis made. Our ignorance, but our duty too, we show. I would all ignorant people would do so. At other times expect our wit and art. This comedy is acted by the heart.
Act 1, Scene 1. Enter Widow, Tabytha, Colonel Cutter, and Dogrel.
Prithee, widow, be not incensed. We'll show ourselves like young lords shortly, and you know, I hope, they used to pay their debts.
Aye, you talk of great matters, Iwis, but I'm sure I could never see a groat yet of your money.
No, we carry no silver about us, that were mechanical and base. Gold we about us bring. Gold, thou art mighty in each place, of metals, prince and king. I tell you, my pockets have not been guilty of any small money in my remembrance.
I know not, but all things are grown dear of late. Our beef costs 3 shillings a stone, and the price of corn is raised too.
Nay, mother, coals raised too, they say. These things you think cost nothing.
Nay, Tabytha, Mistress Tabytha, your faith, law, now I'll make a psalm for you, and be but peaceable. Contain thy tongue and keep it in within thy mouth's last prison. Both jars and also many a sin from out the mouth has risen. And only for odes by the music, and it quickest for them, I think, in the Christian world, taking Turks, infidels, Jews, and all.
Have but a little patience, widow. Well, I'll say this for thee, thou art the honestest landlady upon the face of the earth, which makes me desire to live in your house, and you shall not lose by it. Do but mark the end.
I stand not so much upon that, but I used to have lawyers in my house, such civil, complete gentlemen in their satin doublets, I warrant you, and broad ruffs, as passes, and courtiers, all to be laced and slashed, and fine fellows as you see on a summer's day. They would not say, "Why do ye this?" to a woman, and then knights.
Aye, and gentlemen too, mother.
But you, forsooth, come in drunk every night, and fall a swearing as if you would rend the house in two, and then mumble and tumble my daughter's clothes, she says.
Aye, and would have...
What would we have done?
Nay, no good, I warrant you.
And then you drink up the kilderkin of small beer next morning.
All this will be corrected and amended, landlady. Yes, faith, utter thou must repent. Thou hast been to blame sometimes.
Besides, you are so full of your fripperies, and are always a grinning and sneering at everything. I was wont to have sober boarders in my house, and not such he-ing fellows.
Nay, they mocked and jeered at us as we sung the psalm the last Sunday night.
That was the mongrel rhymer. Oh, by this light he envies his brother poet, honest John Sternhold, because he cannot reach his heights.
Oh, the father, the colonel's as full of waggery as an egg's full of meat. I warrant, Master Dogrel, what you get by him you may even put in your eye and never see the worse for it.
Well, and how dost i' faith now, honest landlady? When shall we walk again into Moorfields and rejoice at the Queen's cake house?
I'll to seek cakes and ale of the purpose there. Thou shalt eat stewed prunes, little Tabytha, till thy smock drop again. A word in your ear, landlady. Can you accommodate us with 2 shillings? Tomorrow, ere the rosy-fingered morn start from Tithias' bed as authors write, ere Phoebus cry Jeho unto his team, we will restore again, and thank you for your pain.
I'll tell you a secret, landlady. Captain Blade and I shall be called shortly to the court. The king has taken notice of our deserts. I say no more. Though yet thou scorn'st me, Tabytha, I'll make thee a lady one day. Will you lend, widow? Great affairs bid me make haste.
I care not much if I trust you for once. Come and take it.
Then, mistress, let me lead you thus, and then, as we go, let's bus.
Bus me no bussings. Oh Lord, how you tumble my gorget.
And exuent. Okay. So far, I mean, we've got sort of a promise of plot, but this scene isn't really about that, and the prologue isn't really about that. It's sort of setting up characters, setting up the world, and the prologue is always a slight question, because this is printed about 10 years later, whether there's a certain looking back and whether this is exactly what was performed. It feels, I mean, early 1642, they probably got a pretty good idea that some bad stuff's going to go down. But I do wonder whether, after the king's been taken out, that maybe there's there is that sense of that maybe they make some tweaks to what's going on in the text. Anyway, what an interesting little house of people they've got here, aren't they? They fun people? Some naughty things might be going on between various people, and but more importantly, we've got this little hint ahead of Captain Blade and Cutter going to the court. And of course, if this is performed before royalty as well, there's a sort of knowingness to the way this functions. Thoughts from the room on this this opening gambit as we sort of get into the world of the play? Someone wave, because I'm trying to... Sarah, then Alan.
I love Dogrel's Dogrel.
Hmm.
I can see why they've called him that. It's just really funny. I love the way he just bursts into it every so often. It's not always in the best of taste, but it is just kind of funny, and you could do so much with that in performance.
Yes, Alan.
Yeah, it's a nice, lively setup, isn't it? It's certainly going to get the audience's attention, I think.
Yeah, Sarah.
I also really like the way that we sort of come into it mid-conversation. You know, it's like there's an argument being going on about the fact that they haven't paid their bill for some time, and we just sort of cut into it, and that's always fun at the beginning of a play. It's fun today, but I should imagine it was particularly fun in 1644. Did you say?
1641 or 42 by our modern calendar.
Yeah, good fun.
Other thoughts? Otherwise, we will crack on. We've got a lot of text to get through today. Lynn.
Yeah, the whole gentleman who basically outspend their income that's a character that just goes on and on and on. I mean, it starts earlier than this, and then it goes on until practically the 20th century.
Yes,
They
these
never
people
carry silver.
Yeah. They've got nothing but their debts to rely on.
Yeah.
Not even for ready money.
No, exactly. But yeah, I mean, that's Lynn's point. Is that this is a thing that keeps going well into the early 20th century, and has variations even upon that since. And yeah, it's also relatively old by this point. It's been going on for 40 years or so at least, certainly in terms of city comedy type material, and obviously precedents anon before that. Okay, let's dive into Act 1, Scene 2 and beyond, because this is a rolling scene. Act 1, Scene 2, Captain Blade, Solus.
I could now be as melancholy as an old scabby mastiff, or the lions in the tower, to a good humour to repent. Well, Captain, something must be done, unless a man could get true gems by drinking, or like a mouse in a cheese enlarge his house room by eating. £400 a year, cashiered? 400 by this light, Captain. All my comfort is that now the usurer's damned, and now that niggardly 70 withered, chapped-fallen and puritanical thing, his wife, refuses to marry me. I would see her burnt for an old witch before I'd take her for a wife, if she had not agues, squinancies, gouts, cramps, palsies, apoplexies, and 24 diseases more than St. Thomas Hospital. And if she live long with all these, I'm sure she'll kill me quickly. But let her be damned with her husband. Bring some drink, boy. I'm socked by the light, with drinking nothing yet.
Act 1, Scene 3, enter to Blade, Karoulla and Dogrel.
What? Are ye come? Bring us a tun, then. And that so big that of Heidelberg may seem but like a barrel of pickled oysters to it. Welcome, Snapshack. Welcome, little vermin of Parnassus. How is't my laureate rhymer? Dost thou sing Fortune, my foe, still with thy brother poet?
Ye muses nine assist my verse, that dwelleth by Helicon along. Captain Blade's praise I will rehearse, with lyre and with song.
Why, that's right ballad, and they hobble like the fellow with the wooden leg that sings them. How dost, man o' blood?
As well as a man of worth can do in these days, where deserts are so little regarded. If war comes once, who but Cutter? Who else but Colonel Cutter? God save you, Colonel Cutter, cry the lords. The ladies, they smile upon Colonel Cutter and call Colonel Cutter a proper gentleman. Every man strives who shall invite Colonel Cutter to dinner. Not a cuckoldly creditor dares pluck me by the cloak and say, "Sir, you forgot your promise." I'm in a strait for moneys. My occasions force me, or the like.
Cheer up, my Hercules upon a sign. I have a plot for ye, which if it thrive, thou shalt no more lie sunning in a bowling alley, nor go on special holidays to the threepenny ordinary, and then cry it pleased my humour better than to dine at my Lord Mayor's.
Would we had some drink here to stop your mouth?
No more be sick 2 or 3 days while thy boots are vamping. No more outwear whores in a reckoning, and leave the house in an anger.
Are you done?
Nor sup at taverns with radishes. Nor for a meal's meat overthrow the King of Spain of the Hollanders when you please. Nor when you go to bed produce 10 several tavern snuffs to make 1 pipe of tobacco.
Slid would I had one here.
Nor change your name and lodging as often as a whore. For as yet, if you have lived like a Tartar in a cart, as you must die, I fear, in one, your home would not have been more uncertain. Your last guests were these, from a waterman's house at the bankside. Marry, you stayed there but a small while because the fellow was jealous of his wife. Passing o'er to the great King Xerxes in a sculler, you arrived at a chandler's house on Thames Street and there took up your lodging. The day before, you should have paid you walk abroad and were seen no more, forever after the smell of the place offended you. And offended you, sorry. Next, you appear at an alehouse in the Covent Garden like a duck that dives in one end of the pond and rises unexpectedly in the other. But that place, though there was beer and tobacco there, by no means pleased you. For there dwelt so many cheaters thereabouts that you could not live by one another. They spoiled your trade quite. Then from a shoemaker's, as you entitled him, marry some authors call him a cobbler, to a basket maker's, from thence to the counter, from thence after much benevolence to a barber's, changing more lodging than Pythagoras his soul did. At length, upon confidence of these new breeches and the scouring of that everlasting buff, you ventured upon the Widow's, that famous house for boarders, and are by this time hoisting up your sails. I'm sure the next fair wind you're gone.
I wonder, Captain, among so many rascally houses, how I happen to miss yours. 'Tis true, I have not been leaguer always at one place. Soldiers must remove their tents. Alexander the Great did it 100 times.
Now to the words of comfort. Drink first, then lordings, listen all.
We do, both great and small. My conscience, this cup of wine has done my genius good.
When first my brother departed,
'Twas poorly spoken by this day.
he committed his daughter and estate to my care, which if she had died or married without my consent, he bequeathed all to me. Being 5 years gone, he died.
How frail is human life. Well sung the divine poet, like to the damask rose you see, or like the blossom on the tree, or like...
Sarah Trundle, either hear out peaceably or I shall cut your ears off. Proceed, Captain.
I falling into ill company, yours, or some other such idle fellows, began to be misled, could drink and swear, nay, at last whore sometimes too, which causes, having now at last made me like Job in everything but patience. Your landlady, for to her husband my estate was mortgaged, I have sought all means to marry.
We, here are.
Pish! I should have lain with either of you two, so it'd been before Hecuba was turned into a bitch or to other into a stone. For though I hate her worse than small beer,
Or paled wine.
Or proverbs and Latin sentences in discourse.
Or a sermon of 2 hours long.
or Dogrel verses, or what you will else, yet she has money, blades. She would be iguana or Peru to me, and we should drink 4 or 5 years securely, like Dutchmen at a wedding. But hang her, till I die and go to hell, 'tis only that can warm her. She scorns me now, my money's gone.
Thus pride doth still with beauty dwell, and like the Baltic ocean swell.
Why the Baltic, Dogrel?
By the Baltic? This 'tis not to have read the poets.
Now, if my niece should marry, presto, the means are gone. And I must, like some gentleman, without fear or regard of the gallows, betake myself to the highway, or else cheat like one of you, and tremble at the sight of a pillory. Therefore, prick up your ears, for your good angel speaks. Upon conditions of share, I marry her to one of you.
Aye. But how, Captain? How?
Why, either she shall have one of you or nobody. For if she marry without my consent, the money is mine own, and she'll be hanged first in the friar's rope ere she turn nun.
I'll be a Franciscan if she do.
Not a Carthusian, I warrant thee, so abstain from flesh. Thou might well have taken holy orders, if it were not for chastity and obedience. Their other vow of ever carrying money about thee, thou hast observed from thy youth up.
I'll have her by Mercury. I've 2 or 3 love odes ready made. They can't choose but win her. Cutter, adore me. Cutter, thou shalt have wine thy fill, though thou couldst outdrink Xerxes' army.
You get her? What? With that ember weak face of thine, that razor of thy nose, those ears that prick up like a puritanical button makers of Amsterdam? Thou look'st as if thou never hadst been fed since thou suck'st at thy mother's milk. Thy cheeks begin to fall into thy mother's mouth that thou mightest eat them. Why, thou hast very lath with a thing cut like a face atop and a slit at the bottom. I am a man, and can do her service. Here's metal, boy.
Is
He your face then? Sorry.
I can fight her quarrels, boy, and beget on her new Achilles.
Yes, thou art a very Achilles in the swiftness of thy feet, but thou art a worse coward than any of the trained bands. I'll have a schoolboy with a catstick take away thy mistress from thee. Besides, what parts hast thou? Hast thou scholarship enough to make a brewer's clerk? Canst thou read the Bible? I'm sure thou hast not. Canst thou write more than thine own name? And that in such vile characters that most men take them for Arabian pothooks. And some think thou dost set thy mark when thou writes thy name. I thirst, Cutter, in the whole encyclopedia, a word that is Greek to you. I am a wit, and can make Greek verses extempore.
Nay, not so. For you come to your verses, Dogrel. I'm sure you had done with wit. He that best pleases her, take her a god's name, and allow the t'other a pension. What think you, gallants?
Agreed. Thou shalt have £3 and a cloak.
Away, you puff, you kickshaw, you quaking custard.
Prithee be patient. Thou shalt have lace to it too.
Pox take you both. Drink and be friends.
Here's to you, Cutter. I'm something choleric and given to jeering. But what, man? Words are but wind.
I'll call her in. Why, boy, within there, call my niece quickly hither.
I'm done. I've left my ode at home. I'm done by Mercury, unless my memory help.
Thus and thus will I accost her. I'm the man. Dogrel's clothes will cast him.
And then we'll pause. It's effectively mid-scene, but the scene breaks before Lucia comes in. Okay, so these are sterling, fine people who are trying to disinherit his ward. There's a lot of really, really, really good dialogue here. There's a lot of really nice speechifying. There is, however, a lot of speechifying. So there is an element here, and this is not a burden. As ever with these things, we can pick and choose the lines we like best and junk the rest, because there's an awful lot of verbiage. But it's really quite engaging verbiage. I mean, these aren't great. These are not nice people. But hopefully they will get their comeuppance and all will be well. We shall see. As ever, this is one of those situations where you're going, it's not a great place to be, but it could all end satisfactorily. It depends partly on who Lucia turns out to be. If she turns out to be a wet blanket who doesn't say anything, then the play is doomed. I'll say that now. But if she basically runs rings around these three reprobates, then I will be a happy bunny. We shall see. I have no idea where this play is going. Any thoughts from the room, Eric? Then Sarah.
I just like how in his monologue, Blade talks to himself in the third person. It's like, yes, Captain, I will do this. Yeah, and sort of like trying to sort of get into character almost, or sort of, boost his confidence or something. I don't know. It's like.
Yes, yeah. I particularly also like the fact that Dogrel goes, oh, I've got some verses I've prepared, it's great, I've got some odes, and then he realises they're in these other clothes. Oh no, I don't have them on me. I need a run up. Sarah, then Susan.
Yeah, I would be tempted not to cut any of this verbiage until it had been workshopped at length, because it's really bouncing along. Given that this is a cold read, that none of us know who these people are or where it's going, it's already bouncing along quite well. And I think, with a bit of rehearsal, a bit of just practice, obviously some of these big speech, I mean, the Dogrel has to be really kind of, over the top, and the Blade's patter has to be really, really fast. But I think with a bit of work and rehearsal, you could absolutely make that work. And I don't know that you would have to cut any of this, because it's already bouncing already. So I think it would absolutely just fly with rehearsal. I will point out it's 26,000 words long. So okay. All right.
We have got there is a sort of.
But some plays run.
I mean, it is moving fast. So
some plays run really faster than others. But it's just so glorious, all of this, for setting up the characters. It's just I would hate to lose any of it at this stage.
Well, I think also early on stuff you tend to lose less. It's later on, if they're still doing this shtick later on, that gets to the point of going, am I bored yet? Raise your hand, and we go from there. But no, I think you're right. I don't think we need to make any precipitate decisions in that sense. It's just there is a sense that a lot of this is it's like I said in the chat. The plot's arrived, and 90% of the scene had passed before the plot was sort of introduced. Susan.
Oh, just to say, I mean, this was a bit gulp when I looked through it yesterday, and I thought, that's big chunks. But my God, it skips along when you're together with other actors bouncing around. No, I don't. Please don't cut. Although, interestingly, when they come to new characters, this writer writes the same chunk. It sort of looks the same size, but maybe that's just a new character. They get interested. Anyway, it's great. I think it's fun.
Yeah, and there's physical business in this as well that we're not fully getting, because there are stage directions that need to be sort of added. There's that line about the where someone seems to throw a coin at somebody else and they sort of throw it back in his face. It's like there seems to be something going on there, and other elements there where we've got Cutter, who is obviously a much more physical person than Dogrel, who's constantly sort of perhaps faffing with paper and it's highfalutin, and it gives you options as actors to do something with this. And yeah, I think the workshop route is probably the best way. I think there is a certain amount of justify your text in process. Anyway, we should carry on with the scene because we're mid-scene. We've set up the situation with Lucia. Act 1, Scene 4, enter Lucia, 2 Blade Cutter and Dogrel.
When she has seen you both, one void the room, and so woo by turns.
I'll go out first and meditate upon my ode.
Welcome, dear niece. I sent for you to entertain these gentlemen, my friends. And hark you, niece, make much of them. They are men of worth and credits of the court. Though they go so plain, that's their humour only. And mark you, niece, they both love you. You cannot choose amiss. I have some business. Your servant, gentlemen.
And we can infer the exit of Blade.
Not choose amiss. Indeed, I must do, uncle. If I should choose again, you are welcome, gentlemen.
I thank you, fairest lady. I am a soldier lady and cannot compliment, but I have travelled over all the world, Germany, Morocco, Switzerland, Persia, France, Hungary, Calliput, Peru.
Weird how he shuffles all the countries together like lots in a hat.
Yet I never saw before so fair a lady. I cannot compliment your faith.
You have taken a long journey, sir. 'Twere best to rest yourself a little while. Will you sit? Will you, sir, take a seat too?
Can't say my ode now. I'll wait upon you presently.
Exit Dogrel.
Fair lady, this 'tis to converse with none but whores. I know not what to say to her. You are the only mistress of my thoughts. My service to you, lady.
Drinks to her.
To me, sir, do you speak or to the wine?
Oh, to you, by Mars. Can you love me, beauty? I'm sure your uncle prefers no man under the coat.
Soft, sir. To ye, you such a take in town so soon. My uncle gave an equal commendation to both of you.
What? To that mole catcher, the old Surge? Oh, he brought him in for humour, to make you sport. I'll tell you what he is.
Pray, do, sir.
The very emblem of poverty and poor poetry. The feet are worse patched of his rhymes than of his stockings. If one line forget itself and run out beyond his elbow while the next keep at home like him and dares not show his head, he calls that an ode. Your uncle and I maintain him only for sport. I'll tell you how I found him. Marry, walking in Moorfields, cross-armed, he could not pluck his hat over his eyes, there were so many holes in it. He had not so much linen about him as would make a cuff for a Bartholomew Fair baby. Marry, the worst I like in him is, he will need sometimes, in way of gratitude, present me with a paper of verses. Oh, here comes the vermin.
And Act 1, Scene 5, re-enter Dogrel to Cutter and Lucia.
I'll leave him alone with you, that you may have the better sport. He'll not show half his tricks before me. I think I've spoiled his markets. Now, will I stand behind the hangings and... Now will I stand behind the hangings and hear how she abuses him. I know by her eyes she loves me. Cutter, thou'rt blessed.
Exit Cutter behind the hangings.
Fairer, oh fairer than the lily, than primrose fair or daffodilly. Less red than thy cheeks the roses, when the spring it doth discloses. Leaves thy eyes put down the starlight, when they shine we see afar light. Oh, these eyes do wound my heart with pretty little Cupid's dart. Wounded I am with deadly smart. The pain reigns in every part. Thy beauty and thy great desert draw me as horses draw a cart. Oh, that I had rhetoric's art in part, start. To move thee, for I would not start till I...
Take heed, sir, for you'll be out of breath anon. You have done enough for my honest part.
Fairest nymph, I swear to thee, the later part was made extempore. Not a piece of prose goes down with me.
I must know it. May I be so bold as to inquire of you your friend's name that was here? He seems to be a man of worth and quality.
That's I.
Quality? Yes.
That's I again. If whoring, drinking, cheating, poverty and cowardice be qualities, he's one of the best qualified men of the Christian... Oh, is that my line? I think... No? I'm wondering... That's I again, that's me. I'm wondering if whoring, drinking... I'm wondering if that's Dogrel. What do you think?
Yeah, that...
Yes, I think actually that's I again is Cutter. The
Yeah.
next bit is Dogrel, and then Oh the Devil is Cutter again.
Yeah.
Try it that
Makes
way
sense.
and let's see how it
Yeah.
goes. I'll just mark it as potentially
Yeah.
wrong.
That's I again.
Yeah, if whoring, drinking, cheating, poverty and cowardice be qualities, he's one of the best qualified men in the Christian world.
Oh, the devil!
He's a great traveller.
In suburbs and by-lanes, he never heard a gun but in Moorfields or Finsbury at a mustering, and quaked then as if they'd been at the Spaniards. Undertake a pot gun should dismay him.
A plague upon him!
Those breeches he wears, and his hat, I gave him. Till then, he went like a paper mill, all in rags, and like some statue in a ruined abbey. About a month ago, you might have seen him. Sorry. Peep out of a grate. Kind, merciful gentleman, for the poor prisoner's sake, poor prisoners undone by certiship and the like.
Contain thyself, great spirit. Keep in a while.
We call him Colonel in the humour only. The furniture of his chamber, for now at mine and some other gentleman's charges he's got one, is half a chair and an earthen chamber pot, the bottom of an inkhorn for a candlestick, and a dozen of little galley pots with salvadum, for he has more diseases.
Oh, I can endure no longer!
And Cutter enters to them.
Dogrel, thou liest. There's my glove. Meet me an hour hence.
And there's mine. I'll put a good face on. He dare not fight, I'm sure.
2 hours hence expect the Saracen's head. I'll do it, by heavens. Though hills were set on hills and seas met seas, to guard thee, I'll reach thy head. Thy head, proud Doggerel.
Exit Cutter.
Nay, you are both even. Just such an excellent character he did bestow on you. Why, thou vile wretch, go to the stews, the goal, seek there a wife. Thou find none there but such will scorn thee. Why, thy opinion of my birth or fortune, my chastity or beauty, which I willingly confess to be but small, so poor and low, that thou couldst think that thyself a match for me, I'll sooner marry with my grave than thou art worse a dirt than that. See me no more.
Exit Lucia.
Spawned by a mistress, with a friend to fight. Hence, lighter odour of biting satires right.
And we'll pause there as the exit of Dogrel. Nice things going on there. I enjoyed lots. I love the fact that Dogrel had to hunt for the rhyme. I really love that that's actually in the script, and he goes through all the plots. I mean, whether he's sitting there with a rhyming dictionary, I don't know. Yeah, there's lots of little bits in there that was really nice. The standing to one side, overhearing him talking about him, giving a variation of what the other one's just done to each other, and then Lucia just ripping into them at the end, which is quite nice. But of course, they're going off to fight a duel now, for someone who doesn't give us stuff about them. At moderately problematic pub, but not so many Saracens head to the pound these days. A lot of them have been renamed. So interesting question. But yeah, it's interesting to note that they do genuinely date that far back as a name. Thoughts in the room on this? Silence. Sarah, then Eric.
Well, you were mentioning earlier about Lucia. She seems quite promising. She seems more than capable of seeing these people for whom they are. So that's, yeah, hopefully we're going to get a bit more of her. I am just loving this play, though, so far, I have to say. It's an absolute scream. And it's one of those plays that I think is going to be, sometimes with these comedies, it's like they're going to be fun for the actors, but maybe not so much fun for the audience. But I think this could be fun for everybody.
Yes, I mean, Lucia does sort of feed enough rope. There's a sense throughout the scene of just going, let's see how it comes out, and then I'll come down on you at the end, which is nice. Eric.
I like to think that when Cutter does his whole thing about, oh yes, I have traveled all over the world, and like there's actually like a big pause between when he says I've traveled all over the world and actually like trying to come up with countries, maybe even starting to make up names for them, because I don't feel like he's the kind of guy who would actually remember any.
Yes,
or maybe he'd come up with like pub names. I don't know, just something that isn't valid, just so that she can go, yes, well, that of course is not true.
Certainly his travelling, it would be very difficult to take that route around the world. You would have to travel back and forth quite a distance to go. That's not a straight line by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, probably not real. Any other thoughts? Lynn.
Just speaking of that line about the list of countries he's visited and Dogrel's response to it, I had a moment of relating to Dogrel. It's like, that is so badly organized. The writing teacher in me was like, you're right, it was really badly organized.
I also, it's that character note for Cutter of him just going, I've never had to talk to a non-professional woman before, and he's standing there just talking into his drink, because that's, and it's like, yeah, that says everything about him, doesn't it really? And it's just like, yeah, she picks up on that straight away of just going, you talking to me or the alcohol? Which you were more interested in this situation? Which the answer is probably the alcohol. Anyway, right, let us continue with it's technically a new scene, though there's only 2 lines between the exit of Lucia and her re-entrance, so structurally a little awkward, but fine, never mind. Act 1, Scene 6. Enter young Truman with Lucia.
I must be gone, my Lucia. I must leave myself and thee more than myself behind me. Thus parts the greedy usurer from his bags with an art heavier than those. He fixes his covetous eye upon the charming metal as if he meant to throng those many pleasures which several times would yield into 1 minute. With as much joy he kisses his beloved idol as I do thee, to whom all gold compared seems but like pebbles to the diamond. And then he sighs, my Lucia. Good Lucia, I cannot hear thee.
And weeps too, if, like us, he bid farewell. Why should your father be so cruel?
He's old and angry, Lucia, very angry, and either has forgot his youthful days, or else I'll swear he did not love my mother with half that noble heed that I do thee. For when he heard your uncle's resolutions, doubting your portion if we two should marry, he forced me to an oath so strange, which though I then durst swear, I scarce dare now repeat. An oath ne'er more to see nor hear thee, Lucia, after the envious shortness of this hour, without his leave.
You will forget me quite then.
Forget thee, Lucia, 'tis not death itself has so much lethe in it. I shall not choose in the long sleep of the grave, but dream of thee. If it be true that souls which leave hid treasures, being buried far less peaceable than their gold, walk up and down, and in their urns want rest, how will my ghost then wonder, which has left such precious wealth behind it? Sure it will desire to see thee, and I fear will fright thee. I would say more, but I shall weep anon.
Exit young Truman.
So quickly gone. He might have stayed, methinks, a little longer, and I owed that happiness to the misfortune of his fortune's absence. Why did he swear to the father? I am a fool that knows not what to say.
Act 1, Scene 7. Re-entered young Truman to Lucia.
Stay, Lucia, prithee stay. I had forgot the business which I came for.
I owe much to your forgetfulness, my Truman. If it be such always, though you forget me, I'll pardon you. What was your business, pray?
To kiss your hand, my dearest.
Was that all? I'm glad to see your grief so small and light that it can find leisure to compliment. 'Tis not like mine, believe me.
Was not that business, Lucia? In my opinion now, the affairs of kings, the honourable troubles of a counsellor are frivolous and light compared to this. May I not kiss your lips too, dearest Lucia? I have an inward dropsy, and my remedy inflames my thirst. 'Tis that best nectar only which has the power to quench it.
If there be nectar there, it was your lip that brought it thither first, and you may well be bold to claim your own. Shall we sit down and talk a little while? They will follow us for parting time.
And that I would not change, not this poor minute in which I see and hear and touch thee, Lucia, for the age of angels, unless thy beloved presence make a heaven there for me too. What shall I do to bring the days to an end? Sure they'll be tedious when I want thy company.
I'll pray for the success of our chaste loves, and drop down tears for beads.
I'll read over the large volume of the creatures, and where I find one full of grace and beauty, I'll gaze and think on that. For that's thy picture.
Whatever kind of needlework I make, thy name I'll intermingle, till at last, without my mind's conjuncture and consent, the needle and my hand shall both agree to draw thy name out.
I will gather flowers, turn wanton in the trueness of my love, and make a posy too, where Lucia shall be mysteriously writ in flowers. They shall be fair and sweet, such as may paint and speak thee to my senses.
Mistress Lucia, Lucia.
I am called. Farewell.
Act 1, Scene 8. Truman, young Truman, Lucia remain on. Enter to them Aurelia.
My father, cousin, would speak with you.
I'll wait upon him.
Exit Lucia.
Will he be gone so soon, sir?
You must offend your father else.
You would have stayed longer with her, I'm sure.
It may be so. Your servant, lady.
Exit young Truman.
Contemned by all, while my proud cousin walks with more eyes on her than the moon, but I, like some small petty star without a name, cast unregarded beams. It must not be. I snatch of all these glories which beauty or feigned virtue crown her with, till her short light confessor but a comet. I love thee, Truman, but since 'tis my fate to love so ill, I'll try how I can hate.
Exit Aurelia, end of Act 1. Oh, that came out of nowhere. I mean, I like that. Oh, I wasn't expecting. Nobody expects the
Spanish.
I'll go to Susan first.
This young Truman reminds me of Falkland in the Rivals. Julia and Falkland are the subplex text, aren't they, in Sheridan's Falkland? And Falkland's a sort of he's a sort of fool, an ardent fool. And I mean, this is so good because all the men are really hopeless, aren't they? I mean, you haven't got much to choose from, Connor. That's just they've all got their problems, and I think this is looking very good.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Truman, young Truman here, is the scene is either really sweet and lovely, or it's vomit-inducing, and it very much depends on how you cast it and how you play with it. Because it's like he comes in, I must go, I must come back. Why? To kiss you. And
it's neurotic weirdo, basically, like Falkland, and actually steals the whole play for it.
But it could all just be very genuine and very sweet, and because they've got the his father's against it match, and he obviously we already know the reason why she's blocked. But then Aurelia comes in, and you just think, it's some random servant person, and it's not. It's not. Aurelia comes in and goes, I really like him too. Bad things gonna happen now. Oh dear. Your favourite cat died. I wonder how that happened. Sarah, then Eric, then Lynn.
Yeah, I was finding Lucia and young Truman fairly insufferable, actually. And Aurelia, I mean, I agree, depending on how it's played, it could be made really sweet and charming. But just off the page, they came across as completely insufferable. And then Aurelia swept in there like a palate cleanse. And that was just great because, you know, when she started her speech, I'm thinking, okay, so she's also in love with him and she's going to be pining in the background. And then it's like, oh no, I don't think she is going to be pining in the background. Let's see what happens here. So, yeah, I thought Lucia was going to be quite a feisty character. She's perhaps not going to be so much of one. She's maybe going to be more of a conventional heroine. But we have Aurelia here to take up the slack, so I'm liking this.
Yeah, no, people wear different masks, different, you know, with her lover, she can be sweet bunny rabbits if she wants. You know, people are allowed to be slightly different in different social contexts.
Nibble, nibble, nibble.
I'm going to stand up for this romance. I am. I don't know why, because it's the kind of thing I hate, but I'm going to stand up for it for the sake of it. Anyway, Eric, then Lynn.
I just find it hilarious because it's kind of like that. Well, the modern equivalent is basically, no, you hang up. I love you. I love you more. I love you. I love you even more. And it's
We're
like,
not codependent at all.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it's very much that thing of like over the topness. If there be nectar there, I kissed your lips. Yeah, it's just very over the top. Also, I realized I kept calling her Lucia, but I don't know if it's Lucia or Lucia.
I don't know either. I've been alternating because that's what I do.
Yeah, no, my brain went like Lucia di Lammermoor, but I don't know if that's actually like related because that's like centuries later. So that has nothing to do with it, I think.
No, I'm deliberately not making a decision on that. I'm just going to keep changing it and see which I prefer. Lynn.
Yeah, so a couple of unrelated things. I was struck by the fact that Truman's metaphors when he's talking about his love for Lucia are all about money. He compares his love for her to a usurer's love for his money. It's like, oh, I can imagine a usurer kissing his money bags, and that's kind of creepy, actually. That like the thing we compare our passion to is the love of money. I mean I just wondered about that. I'm not quite sure to make of that, but it's a little disturbing, actually.
I think there is some variation on. I don't think it's all about money. But
both of his metaphors were like, and if people come back as ghosts because they've got buried treasure, oh, how much more am I likely to come back if I die and you're still around? Like,
but he's also talking about the book. If you're in a book of beautiful, if there was a book of things that are beautiful, you'll be there. Right. If there are flowers, you'll be the best posy. I don't think that's universal. I mean, I'm not saying it's not there, but I'm sort of there is other stuff too. It's not just that.
But that was I don't know.
I wonder how pointed is. I'll pray for the success of our chaste loves. Is he getting slightly too close at that point? Chase. How pointed is chaste in that line? Yeah. Again, actor's decision, possibly.
And at first I was, when Aurelia first came on, I'm like, oh, here's an interesting spanner in the works. It's like very unexpected. You know, you have thwarted young love. That's, you know, it's the very stereotypical new comedy structure. But I'm kind of concerned about what the play is going to do to Aurelia. I mean, here she is, the daughter of this no good mercenary braggart, Blade. That's not a situation anybody, I mean, feel bad for her just for that, for being Blade's daughter, because he's like got nothing and he's a terrible person. And, you know, and then, you know, everybody wants to marry her cousin, partly because she has money. Maybe she is prettier, maybe she is like a nicer person or just sort of more fun to be around or whatever. But, you know, I mean, here's Aurelia getting the short end of the stick and being portrayed as kind of a witch. I am not sure I'm going to be very happy with the way the play treats her, but we'll see.
We shall see. Let's find out as we dive into Act 2, Scene 1. Enter Cutter and Dogrel.
Come on, Dogrel. Now will I cut your throat?
You'll be hanged first.
No, by this light.
You'll be hanged after then.
I'll slice thee into steaks.
I believe indeed thou art so hungry thou couldst feed like a cannibal.
No, that'll be a dish for the devil. He'll dress thee at his own fire. You called me coward. Hadst thou as many lives as are in Plutarch, I'd make an end of 'em. I must daunt him for fear he should fight with me. I will not leave so much blood in thee as will wet my nail. And for thy flesh, I'll mangle it in such manner that the crow shall not know whether it was a man's body or no.
He was once a coward, and I never heard yet of his reformation. Here, thou Ultionate Jove and Muses 3. Muses? Plague upon 'em, I meant Furies. Here, thou Ultionate Jove and Furies 3.
Nay, then, leap from the leathern dungeon of my sheath, thou Durindana brave. Will nothing do? Come on, miscreant.
And they draw.
Do, strike if thou darest.
Coward, I'll give thee the advantage of the first push.
I scorn to take anything of thee, I.
Thou hadst better eat up thy mother's soul than touch me.
If thou wilt not strike first, take thy life.
I had rather die than give the first blow, since thou had said it.
I see this quarrel, cutter, will come to a quart of wine. Shall's go?
How rash is anger! Had not reason checked me, I should have killed my poet for a woman. A very woman. Let's sheath Dogrel.
Sorry, I was just taking that in. Enter two Dogrel and Cutter. Puny.
Here's company. Slid. I'll fight then.
Hello, Paynims. Fighting like two sea fishes in a map. Slaying, killing like horse leeches. Why, my little Gamolri, what arms and arts.
Tamati quam mercurio, I. Sly. Outbraved by a fellow that has no more valour in him than a woman's tailor.
By my father's soul, I'll kill him and he were an army.
Oh, hold, stop. This colonel's spirit's all flame.
'Tis the flame of a flapdragon, then. But 'twill hurt nobody.
Master Puny, you do me wrong.
What do ye mean, buffs?
Slife! And you hinder me, Puny!
Oh, pox take you. Kill one another and be hanged then. Do. Stab. Why don't you?
At your command, Master Puny? I'll be forced by no man. Put up, Dogrel. We'll fight for no man's pleasure but our own.
Agreed. I'll not make another sport by murdering any man, though he were a tinker.
Oh. Why now you speak like a righteous homunculus. Ye are both great spirits as big as Indian whales, for wit and valour a couple of phoenixes.
Oh, 'tis my fault, Puny. I'm the resolutest man, if I be but a little heated. Pox take it, I'm a fool for it.
Give me thy hand.
I did not think thou hadst been so valiant to face. I should have killed myself if I had hurt thee in my fury.
So should I by this hand.
This is rare. Up and down like a game at chess.
Why, a game at chess more than any other?
A game at chess? Why, Pox, thou art a kind of poet, I confess, but for wit you shall pardon me. There is as much in Tom Coryat's shoes. But really, why did you two Pythagoreans fall out?
A trifle, only a mistress.
A pox taker. I would her in a humour only. I'd rather marry a wench of gingerbread. They're both of a complexion.
And then her mouth's as wide as crocodiles. Her kisses devour a man.
Her eyes are like the eyes of a needle, and her nose pointed like that. Wonder her face is no cleaner, for those two perpetually water it. Oh, as for her lower parts, blessed are they that live in ignorance.
What an Heligobalus make you of this wench? would I see this Barbara Pyramidum?
Hang on, she looks like a gentlewoman upon the top of a ballad.
Shavers, who in the devil's name would you guess to be my mistress?
Some wench with a red lattice.
Some beast that stinks worse than Thames Street.
It looks like a shoulder of mutton stuffed with parsley.
Faith, guess who?
'Tis impossible among so many whores.
Faith, Tabytha. None but gentle Mistress Tabytha.
We shall have him turn brownest now and read comments upon the revelations.
Thou hast hit it, Dogrel. I'll put myself into a rare garb. Buff thou must off, truly, buff thou must.
Snared a good humour. I could find in my heart to change religion too.
Locks, no one would change with me, I'm sure. Canst thou put off swearing with Buff? Canst thou abstain in the middle of a long grace from crying a plague upon him? The meat's cold. Canst thou repeat scripture enough to make a Puritan? I'm sure, for understanding, thou'lt be like enough to beat any on 'em.
Let me alone. I'll deal with no oath above God's fatlikins, or, by my truly, exclaim upon the sickness of drinking healths, and call the players rogues, sing psalms, hear lectures, and, if I chance to preach myself, woe be to the act, the object, the use, and application.
Oh, thou art an everlasting stinker, Colonel. 'Tis the most potent humour. There's mustard in it, bites in the nose.
Dogrel, take heed of swearing before Tabytha.
If I look not as grave as a judge upon the bench, let me be hanged for it.
Come away, physicians. Slid I'll be of some religion ere it be long too.
And they exit. There are some excellent things in this scene, and there are some less excellent things in this scene. And this is where we're sort of coming to what I was sort of hinting at earlier when we were talking about there's a lot of really nice dialogue. There's lots of lively dialogue, but then there's also an awful lot about the moment, the cultural moment that they're living in then. There's a lot of stuff where you're sitting there going, I feel I need footnotes. I mean, I get most of them because we've been living in this universe, but you know, it's still slightly out of my period of the 1640s. I'm not so in the zone there because we haven't done quite so much stuff from it. And there's just so many little references and little things and little bits of slang where you're going, ooh, I'm starting to slip off the edge of this, which is a shame because the very opening of the scene's really good. These two cowards, they don't want to fight. They're going to pretend to fight. They find a reason not to fight, and then a witness comes on and go, oh no, we can't lose face and not fight. Oh, we'll do some fighting, and then they start introducing some plot stuff towards the end. This is a scene where I feel they need to fillet it down, if only because just the unrelenting misogyny of Cutter and Dogrel does get quite tiresome after a while as well. I'm not saying we should get rid of that because they're not very nice people and we should still demonstrate that, but there are limits to how much of that I can cope with. Greg, then Susan.
Two things. I like the fact Puny doesn't seem quite as lives up to his name. He seems a little more strong than that, unless Puny had a different reference. And can I just shout out to Game at Chess, which I'm assuming might have been a reference to a certain little play.
Well, it's an interesting question, that, because it as a reference, it doesn't really do anything with a game. Rather than there is, you know, it's a turn of phrase that you might use when talking about chess. So I'm wondering, actually, has it almost lost its... I mean, it's certainly still in currency. People remembered Game at Chess for a long time. You know, it's only 20-odd years since it happened. But it's an interesting question about actually how much... Is that a genuine cultural reference point to that, or is it slightly to one side of it? And it's just now a turn of phrase. When talking about just playing chess. It's just what you say, a game at chess. Susan.
Just one word. Shavers. Oh, I'm going to use that. Shavers, shut up when I see a load of guys together. Isn't that brilliant? I have never seen that used as, you know, hey, bloke, hey, guys, shut up, or, you know, move along. Shavers, move along. That would stop someone in their tracks, wouldn't it?
I'm also wondering about the education of Puny, because he does come out with some stuff. It really does, and stuff with, you know, So I'm curious about who he is in this context. Anyway, we need to move on. We've got a lot of text. I'll briefly go to Alan, then we will rattle forward.
Yeah, just a thought whether Puny is a recurrence of the clever servant type who we've seen in a number of plays that we've done.
I think he's slightly more on their level socially, but it might be following that sort of shape. I'm not sure yet. I don't think we've really got much data about who he is, really. And I'm not going to go back to the stage, the dramatis persona, because I don't trust these things. Act 2, Scene 3. Enter the two generations of Truman, young and old.
You hear me.
Sir,
Sir me no sirs. I say you shall marry Mistress Tabytha.
I hope, sir.
When I bid you do anything, then you are hoping. Well, what do you hope, sir?
That you'd be pleased.
No, I will not be pleased till I see your manners mended. Mary Gap, you'll be teaching your father?
I am.
Go to your foolish boy, and know not what's good for yourself. You are. What are you, pray? We shall have you crow over your father?
I shall observe.
Will you not? Sure. Will you observe me? 'Tis very well if my son come to observe me in my old days. Will you observe me? Will ye?
I mean, sir.
You shall mean what I please if you be mine. I must be bound to your meaning.
It may be.
You'll teach me what may be, will you? Do not I know what may be? 'Tis fine, 'tis very fine. Now in your wisdom, now what may be?
That Captain Blade.
Now what? What can he do? I'll see his nose cheese before you shall marry his niece. Captain Blade's a swaggering companion. Let him swagger and see what it gets by his swaggering. Like he gets by his swagger. I would have swaggered with him but for his ears when I was a young man, and though I have done swaggering, well, I shall meet with Captain Blade. I hold him a tester on it.
Would he were gone. I shall obey.
Obey me no obeyings, but do what I command you. I'll to the widow and talk about her portion. Stay, I had almost forgot to tell you. Oh, Mistress Tabytha is a virtuous maid, a very religious wench. I'll go speak concerning her portion.
It may be, sir.
You'll never leave this trick. You'll be at your maybes. Take heed, boy, this humor will undo thee. She cannot have less than 3,000 pounds. Well, I'll go see, and d'ye hear, she goes plain, and is a good gossip, which of your spruce mincing quincing dames can make bone lace like her. Oh, 'tis a notable, apt, quick, witty girl. I'll go to her mother about the portion.
Exit old Truman.
About this time her letter promised me a meeting here. Destiny itself will sooner break its word than she. Dear mistress, there's none here besides your vassal. She's ready.
And Act 2, Scene 4. Enter Lucia veiled.
Ha! Why discovering? This mystery is darker than the veil that clouds thy glorious face, unless to increase my desire first, and then my joy to see thee. Thou cast this subtler night before thy beauty. And now, like one scorched with some raging fever, upon whose flames nor dew nor sleep hath fallen, I could begin to quarrel with the darkness, and blame the slothful rising of the morn, but with more gladness entertain it, than they whose icy dwellings the cold bear o'erlooks, when after half the year's continued night, and the most tedious night of all but death, a sudden light shot from their horizon brings the long-wished for day, which with such glory leaps from the east, as doth thy mateless beauty. When thus the mist departs,
offers to pull away the veil.
Why shrinkest thou back? I prithee, let me see thee, Lucia. I'd rather some good power would strike me blind than lose the course for which I love mine eyes. At least speak to me. Well may I call it night when silence too has joined itself to darkness. And did I not swear I would not? Thy goodness can save others too from sinning. I had quite forgot my oath, yet sure an oath forced from a lover's tongue is not recorded in heaven's dreadful book, but scattered loosely by that breath that made it. However, thy blessed letter makes me patient, now givest all virtues. I can love thee thus. And though thy skin was such that it might seem a black veil cast over thy nature, by nature over thy body, yet I would love thee, Lucia. Every night, which is the harvest time of all our hopes, will make thee as thou art now. And dost thou think I shall not love thee more then? We trifle here. I'll follow thee, O heaven. Prosper the wise invention which it had taught thee.
And exeunt. Okay, so we have a really nice little scene with old Truman who just didn't let his son get a word in edgeways, which is very nicely structured, actually. It's like, but no, don't do that. It feels very, it's very familiar as well as being very familial. And then enter Lucia veiled, and we cannot see who is under the veil. I wonder what's going on there. Yeah, very briefly, any thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like, Truman seems, like, the young Truman seems very sort of, even in his previous scene with Lucia, where he's like, I will do this, I will do that. He doesn't actually do very much. He just says he will. And he's very verbose, as you can see from all this. Like, when is coming? This is a mystery, dark. And it's like, dude, just stop analyzing and get rid of the veil or something. I don't know, like, move on.
Yeah, you do get the impression that he's possibly drunk from the same well as Dogrel, just in blank verse. Okay, let's move on. Act 2, Scene 5. Enter Captain Blade and a servant.
Is he carried to prison? That damned urinal monger, that stinking clayster-piped rogue, that ignorant satin cat. He has not so much physic as would cure the toothache. A slave that poisons gentlemen. To keep his hand in ewer must a slave come upstairs, mount the bank for money, and not be dishonoured down? He looked as patiently then as any fiddler need to do. Give me some small beer and the godly book. I must not go to hell. There are too many physicians there. I was never in a worse disposition to die in my life. My guts begin to squeak again. Nothing vexes me now but that I shall stand pictured in a ballad with "Beware the physician" or some such sentence coming out of my mouth. I shall be sung in Smithfield, not a blind alehouse, but the life and miserable death of Captain Blade shall be pasted up in. There shall I be brought, confessing my sins at the latter end and giving good counsel. You will be jumbling still. 10 to 1, but Dogrel makes an epitaph. There's another mischief. Here, take the book again. I'll not trouble my brain now, but I'm dying.
Here's the widow, sir, and her daughter come to see you, and they have brought Master Knockdown to comfort you.
How? Everlasting knockdown? Slid, they would trouble a man when he's a-dying. Sirrah Blockhead, let in Knockdown, and I'll send thee to heaven before me. I have but an hour to live, my physician says, and that's too little for him to preach in.
Shall I let the widow in?
That's a she, Knockdown too? Well, let her come in. I must bear all torment patiently now. But, rogue, take heed of Joseph Knockdown. Thou shalt not live with ears if Joseph Knockdown enter. A plague upon all physicians.
I'm going to pause there because there's a lot to pick apart here. I'm not sure who is carried to prison at this point. I was slightly confused by that reference. Is it the physician he's just spoken to? I think he's just damning this guy because it felt like that was to do with plot, and it's not. I mean, is he just hungover? It's like he's suddenly ill. And he's very unhappy about it. But again, for popular culture of the time, and because we've lived in that time, I can literally see that ballad picture. I know exactly what they're talking about with the little speech
and
bubble
it's going scroll.
saying
Yeah.
"Beware the physician." It's and it it sort of lands reasonably well for us today. You know, we have comics, we have this kind of thing. It's not quite the same cultural reference, but it really is really quite nicely done. Actually, that he's not a happy bunny. Maybe he's got some terrible disease and he's just. He's just left the STD clinic, and it's the mercury enema hasn't gone down well.
There is a lot. I think he's got something wrong with his urine. I mean, I looked up a clyster pipe. It's like a colostomy bag, isn't it?
It's an enema.
It's an enema, right?
Yeah. So that's like super gross. He's like,
Yeah.
Super gross.
So yeah, when I'm sort of, this is why I'm leaning towards a mercury treatment going down a certain of a certain venereal disease.
Syphilis. Yeah.
That feels like that's where it's going, though it doesn't state it explicitly what's going on there. So there's an interesting question. Maybe he can't sit down. Maybe if he can't sit down, then we are moving in the general direction of Game at Chess. So.
There are many of those little vials of mercury that have been mudlocked in the mud of the Thames. Many of a lot of people were trying to cure their syphilis in the Thames side.
So yeah, that must be. Anyway, it's sort of scene setting because he's about to have people come in and speak to him. Eric.
Yeah, I put it in the chat as well. Like, it sounded a bit like Volpone, and I couldn't tell if he's making it up or not. Because, like, Volpone does have this thing of, like, I'm dying. Oh, I can marry this rich widow, and she will, I will inherit her. Oh, yeah. No, it's kind of, but I don't know. Maybe he is genuinely dying or not.
I think this is genuine. I don't think this is performative. I don't know because we haven't read on. But it set his mood for the entrance of Widow and Tabytha. So let us continue in the scene. He's on with the servant. Act 2, Scene 6. Enter to Captain Blade, Widow and Tabytha.
How do you? How is't, sir?
Cut off at the flower of my age, widow.
Not so, sir. You are old, neighbor. God he knows.
The very slower face, that damned quacksalver.
He looks like a rogue. A man might know him for a rogue by his very eyes. Take comfort, sir. We must all die either sooner or later. Our life is compared to a flower, and a flower is subject to uncertainty, as Master Knockdown observes.
Oh, the torture of such a tongue. Would I were dead already.
Alas, good man, his tongue, I warrant ye, is hot. Look how he raves, daughter. I have heard indeed that many rave when they are poisoned. Think on your sins, sir.
I prithee, molest me not. There's none of 'em worth thinking of. Oh, I'm hotter than a dozen fevers. Give me a cup of sack there. Shall I die thirsty?
By no means, Master Blade. Fellow, take heed what ye give him. He must have none. It breeds inflammations.
I'll never repent without a cup of sack. Do choose whether you'll have some or no.
For his soul's sake, then, I'll drink to him a cup of sack.
And the drinks.
To my good journey, widow. Sirrah, fill me a brimmer. Here, Tabytha.
Drinks. Act 2, Scene 7. Enter 2 Blade, Widow and Tabytha, Aurelia, Cutter and Dogrel.
Stand to it now.
Warrant you, I'll stand like a knight of the post. I swear with the devil. That's the Cutter. He's done it 40 times before a judge already.
My dearest father, though we cannot call the sentence of fate back that's passed upon you, yet heaven has mixed some mercy with its anger and shown us the cursed plotters of your ruin.
How now, Violet? You see, I'm going to heaven, and ye must follow. But the captain must be saved before the colonel. Who art thou? A godly weaver?
I am not he that I was of old. What hath passed is gone and vanisheth, but what is now remaineth.
No, I'll be sworn he is not. Never was a Christian creature so altered, as they say.
He said a prayer last night so zealously that all the house heard him. did they not, brother Master Cutter?
Sister, I did pour out myself last night. Captain, you're abused.
A small abuse. Nothing but only poisoned.
Yes, i' faith, we saw the position. Mistress Lucia and Truman consulting all together. Position up to town. Showed it them. They seemed to approve. An oath of secrecy we heard them take, but suspected nothing by this hand. We honest men do seldom suspect others.
Is this true, Colonel?
Should I say it is not true, I should not tell the truth if I should say so.
You swear 'tis true?
Before an elder, I shall swear.
Aurelia, send for him immediately, as if I meant to see him contracted, and bid the servants be ready to carry him away. I'll see him clapped up close before I die.
I go, sir.
Exit Aurelia, Act 2, Scene 8. Enter to them Lucia.
Dearest uncle, I come to beg one boon of you, the last which you can grant me, or I need wish to.
Speak, gentle niece.
That since the love twixt Truman and myself have been so fixed, and at our fortunes equal, you will be pleased to seal with your last breath the confirmation of our loves, our contract. And when your soul shall meet in heaven by my father's, as soon as he has bid you welcome hither, he'll thank you for our marriage.
Oh, by all means. Where's gentle Master Truman? He's sorry for my death, good man. I warrant ye. Weep not for me, dear niece. I know it grieves you. Where's loving Master Truman?
Without, sir, waiting on your will, as on the voice of his good fate.
Pray call him in.
Exit
Stella,
Lucia.
fetch 2 or 3 more of my knaves in.
The assembling of these women, like a folded picture, that every diversity of light represents diversely.
Hang all women beside you and your daughter, widow. I could almost like Mohammed's religion for turning all the sex out of heaven.
Act 2, Scene 9. Enter to them young Truman and Lucia veiled.
"'Tis as we wished, dear lady. Oh, this blessed hour."
Away with them immediately. Let them be sent to prison straight.
"What means this rudeness? I understand not this incivility."
Ungracious children, ye have poisoned a most virtuous soldier here.
"I poisoned? What do you mean?"
Away with them, I say. They shall find another place to answer for it.
Exeunt servants with Truman and Lucia.
Hey ho, what a pity 'tis.
Captain, prithee away with these 2 impertinences. Since you must die, let's have a parting cup for shame.
But thou art turned apostate.
I did but feign all this. I'm as very a rogue as ever I was.
Thou speakest righteously. We will not make a dry farewell on't. Widow, I have some business with these 2. Shall I desire privacy a little while?
Fare you well, Mr. Cutter. You can speak comfortably to him. I'll see you again anon. Oh, the wickedness of these worldlings. Come, Tabytha.
Exeunt Widow and Tabytha.
The doctor says I shall die without pain. Therefore, my sparks of Asia, let's be merry for a while. Boy, fetch some wine and an hourglass.
An hourglass? What emblem shall we have? Bring a scythe too, and this same lean, greedy, hungry poet shall act time here.
Enter boy with wine and an hourglass.
Well said, my little pawn. So, thus I'll husband mine time. According to my emphyric's computation, I am to live an hour, half of which I do allot to drink with you, a quarter to settle some business, and the rest to good meditations and repentance. How like you this, my gallants?
Most logically divided. Never scholar divided mess better.
A boy fills wine.
Oh, how it sparkles! Never be drunk again. My Homer Junior, have at thee. Thus will string up my muse, rejoice young frog of Helicon.
Drinks.
No, rather let me weep. Drop by briny tears, till I, like Niobe.
There's a piece of her sticks in his throat still. Drink it down, Dogrel.
Do, for when I am once gone, you must e'en, like Mahometans, count wine a thing forbidden.
Let's drink! Let's drink whilst life we have. You'll find but cold drinking in the grave.
Now catch your face. Boy, go down and fill the t'other court, that we may drink the captain's health before that we do part.
Why dost thou frown, thou arrant clown?
Hey, boys, another catch of faith, and all our men are very, very merry. Merry, even, and all our men were drinking.
1 man of mine,
2 men of mine,
3 men of mine.
and a man of mine, as we went by the wayward, drunk, damnable drunk, and all our men were very, very merry.
Very merry. Hey, brave boys, now Cutter, thou art a precious Puritan.
And thou a puissant captain. Some would have pined and kept a quarter and howled at their death, and have been more froward and troublesome than a citizen's wife when she takes physic. This is true valour.
Sure he has died before, he's so expert at it.
Act 2, Scene 10. Enter to these old Truman.
What says old Priam to Achilles great?
'Tis well. I'm glad to see you in, you Priams. But for all your Priams and your Achilles's, what have you done with my son?
Thrice was thy Hector drawn about the walls.
Xanthus and Simois with his purple gore.
And well a day, we're stained all o'er.
Is very well, excellent well, all's well that ends well. I say, I shall find law, I hope. My son Dick in prison, and old Dick laughed at here by ragamuffins. This is very excellent. Well, I thank you, gentlemen, I thank you heartily.
'Tis not so much worth, i'faith, sir. What do you mean, sir? Pray spare your courtesy. Nay, I pray be covered, sir.
It may be so, 'tis very likely, sir, and there be law in Westminster.
And what dost thou mean, old man?
And what dost thou mean, old man?
If thou mean'st to live long, plump, lusty and strong.
Then take of the cup and the can.
Well, I'm made a laughing stock, it seems.
And good sir.
Yes, I am made a laughing stock. I shall take some other course. I hold you a groat. Rest ye merry, gentlemen, I pray be merry. Very, very merry.
Nay, you shall stay and drink first.
Shall I, Jack Sauce?
Strikes off his hat.
Pray, sir, you be covered too.
Come, old Jethro, here's a cup of wine will stir thy brains again. They're mouldy now.
Aye, you'd poison me, would you? 'Tis very well if a man may be suffered to poison whom he pleases.
And breaks the glass.
No, your good son has got the art of poisoning.
My son? Thou liest, my son!
If ye be raging lion man, do you see that door? Be gone to your son and take some juice of opium. Thou wants sleep, Jethro.
Truman offers to go out and turns back again.
There's law, Captain.
There is so. Would you go fetch it?
Nay, there is none, it seems.
True. There shall be no law, so you'll be gone.
There shall be no law, say you. I desire no more, 'tis very exceeding dainty. There shall be no law. I desire no more, 'tis a kind of petty treason. You'll remember, sir, that there shall be no law. That's enough. I pray remember, sir, and so farewell. There shall be no law.
And exit old Truman.
This worm-eaten old fellow has spoiled our sport. And what says my hourglass now? Time was he face?
How do you feel yourself?
As hot as hell. Come, we'll take our last farewell within. And farewell here, all drinking. God send me a good journey, I say.
Then briny tears come trickling down a face, the loss of him.
And And what?
No, you put me out.
And they exit. End of the act. Lots of fun stuff in that. Blade's extended death. And I do like this whole thing about, call for an hourglass and say, get a scythe while you're at it. What symbolism are you doing here? This isn't a Lord Mayor show or something.
Brilliant.
Yeah, there's some lovely stuff, and then apportioning how he's going to spend the hour, and then but in the midst of this, there is some plot did vaguely happen in this scene, in the sense that Lucia comes in and says, "Can I marry him because you're dying?" And he says no, and locks them away. And again, veiled Lucia, and I am wondering now because we were talking earlier about signification of the veil. Was it something like Aurelia? Being in place for a fake marriage in the wrong direction or something like that. That was sort of bobbing around in her head. It just seems. I'm just wondering whether there's just a doubling thing going on, and she can't speak at certain times and needs to be covered, and just a body's on stage with a bit of sheet over them. I'm just wondering if there's some weird structural reason for that, rather than plot reason, because at the moment I'm not detecting a plot reason because of where Aurelia physically is in between those units of action. I'm sure this will be answered later. I'm just throwing this out here. There's something. It's an odd detail to keep coming up that she's veiled and she doesn't speak.
Blade didn't say anything about, I'm not going to let her be seen by anybody other than those two, or he didn't say anything like that in the first speech.
Don't recall that. We've had that in another play. Heaven help us all. The English Moor, which is a deeply problematic play. But yeah, it's just a little odd structural thing, and I'm just wondering whether, I say, they've only got so many performers, and that they're doing some rather odd doubling, and someone has to put a sheet over his head every so often. That could be entirely erroneous and meaningless. I'm throwing it in there. But it does feel like the plot's sort of been put on hold so that Blade can do his death routine. And this is where we do get into that point of, are the actors enjoying this too much? Because there is some really good stuff in here, but there's an awful lot of good stuff in here and things. Susan?
I think this play is terrific. It's the best we've done for ages. And I really do think this would be cast by the very best comics going. Every one of these parts is extremely good and very even. So, you wouldn't get different comics spatting too much. It really requires real high comedians, doesn't it, on every part?
Yes, and there's there are differences between the various. I was going to say blades. The three rogues are suitably different. You've got a different kind of comedy going with young Truman. His father's got a different comedic shtick as well, which are working on very different kind of veins, but they're all very recognisable tropes that you can just latch onto and create business. I'm interested. This show is so. It's constantly full of song references. We had Fortune My Foe earlier, which is, the generic tune that you sing every single sodding ballad to. We had the ballad reference about, the picture with the Beware the Physician. It's full of this sense of energy of popular culture at the time. And something that I'd like to try and make sure you could have in a production today, that those things really land with that kind of thrust. It's always a bit of a tricky thing with this period and this kind of comedy of making topical gags or popular culture references land, and I think that's one of the challenges of really making the life of this play is partly about the society it's in, some of which the analogues are really good and some of which they're a little shaky around the edges. Eric, then Alan.
What I found interesting was when Blade goes on about his time and stuff. He's like, yeah, I'm going to divide my next hour and I'm going to do half an hour of drinking, quarter fix some stuff, and then the rest to good meditations and repentance. And I'm guessing that by this point, like in terms of historically, like this would have been acceptable and considered, like, because repentance would have been perfectly acceptable at this point in time.
Vital.
Yeah.
Even within
He
Protestantism.
could get away with anything, basically, which is interesting considering that there were like a few sprinkles of religion in this. Yeah.
But he's only going to give 15 minutes to repentance. I mean, that's the important thing.
Yes.
You know, 10, 12, 15 max. But, fair enough. Alan.
Did you say at the beginning that this was originally put on at Cambridge?
Yes.
So is it a university play then rather than a playhouse piece?
Well, that I don't precisely know the auspice on. I am because it's played before the King in Cambridge, so I am assuming that it's a university play, but it might just be a play put on at university. He's quite, within the context of a royal visit. So it could be slightly different. I genuinely don't know. It's not my end of history.
I think he went to Cambridge, this writer, when I Googled him anyway.
Yeah. I'm assuming that because it's a young work for him, and he will have a very long career, and he will return to this. Just a little spoiler for everyone: he does. This play does get performed professionally, but in 1661 with a different title. And he will get into trouble because some of the comedy doesn't land in quite the way it did in 1642. So 41, 42. And so it's interesting that we often talk about how certain comedy doesn't age well. Within 20 years, it looks like they're making some of the jokes about Cavaliers, Roundheads, shall we say, don't land quite so well on the other side of the restoration of the monarchy. So all of these Blade, Cutter, etc., look like they're making fun of the noble royal side in a way that isn't quite so fun for people apparently after the restoration. So whereas this is for a royal crowd just before the interregnum, so it's before someone gets his head chopped off. Lynn.
Yeah, well, and by 61, we're trying to make peace between the two sides. So anything that seems to insult either one is probably a little dicey. Like you just want to everybody's just going to get along now. Was I going to say, it doesn't read like a playhouse play the way we're told those were produced, because you really have to deliver these lines like a squirrel on an energy drink. I mean, and the scene between old Truman and young Truman, and old Truman is constantly interrupting. I mean, the gag is, "Oh yeah, tell me about it," and then he interrupts him when he tries to tell him. That's you can't really do that with cue scripts. So this is something that had to be rehearsed.
Yeah, and also the core company's very tight. You get the impression that there's about 6 people who can really act, and then there's some people who say some words. And I mean, that might not be fair, but in the sense of it doesn't have the distribution a playhouse play has in terms of, but it feels just that there'll be just 1 or 2 slightly bigger orbiting parts who would probably have a little bit more to do. But again, I could be wrong on that. I'm saying this off the top of my head. Eric.
I just wanted to highlight the line, "Rejoice, young frog of Helicon." It's just such a good line. Because Dogrel then goes, "No, rather let me weep." And it's just kind of like, the Cutter always, I just love the double act of Dogrel and Cutter sort of going, "Yeah, just shut up and get on with the drinking now, will you?"
The play is full of good one-liners. I mean, this is the thing: is sup at taverns with radishes. And it's not even trying to be a funny line. It's just got, it's just bouncing in all sorts of interesting different. We could spend ages actually dissecting some of those individual lines, and that's again where the sort of that sense of the phraseology of a period, where idiom becomes the meat and drink for a play, and if that idiom dies, then the play is in trouble, regardless of how well structured it is. And
I mean, would those radishes be like a red-faced drinker? Is that what that means?
in that context, possibly.
Yeah.
Again, this is the thing: is all of these things. This is a text I don't have any modern edition for. I don't have the cushioning of footnotes. We're having to supply our own as we're going along. And I think, there's an awful lot of unpacking here to just say how it lands. Okay, we're into final thoughts. Obviously, we're only a third of the way through the play. It's a long play. I think there is definitely room for trims and sort of discussions about how to make the comedy land when it's doing a lot of cultural reference points that have passed on. Same problem we often have with Ben Jonson and some other city comedy stuff. Eric, I know you're popping out early. Any final thoughts?
I hate to say that I'm enjoying this, but I am.
You can say you're enjoying it.
It's so mean, but hilarious at the same time. Like, just some of it is just like, yeah. I just like how Dogrel and Cutter and Blade are written is very sort of actually rather than like academic, which is sort of the complete opposite of. I mean, it's not like the sort of university plays that we've seen where they kind of go, "Oh, look how smart I am. I'm smart as a smart thing with smart things," and it's like sort of. It's quite different and very alive. It bounces off the page.
Yes, I mean, university drama really does flip from unbelievably learned to dumbass shit. Really is. It's astounding that the gap is just they just go from one extreme to another. And this seems to have a good mix. I mean, it's got some scholarly jokes in that. There are some really clever bits. But they don't sit there slapping you in the face saying how terribly clever they are. It just feels natural. Or at least that's my impression. I could be entirely wrong on that point, and other people are going, what the hell is he on about?
It certainly doesn't get to that point of, like, a box of brains and, like, the whole conceited peddler stuff.
Yeah, the Thomas Randolph stuff where you do get the sense of he's hitting you over the head with his education a little bit too much. And it's too in-jokey, whereas the in-jokes here, again, land a little better. Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the university context, it's reminding me more of sort of footlights type thing. There's some bright youngsters, and I suspect some of the routines may well have evolved over an extended period of time. The three lodgers, that whole bit of the plot, because the repartee is so sharp. One wonders whether this was sort of shtick that had happened over one or more extended drinking sessions in the college bar.
Yeah, I mean, that is a question, as I say, in terms of how these, how much these things are written for specific personnel, how much stage experience they have. Is Blade, for example, coming off someone who does this kind of thing a lot at uni, and that feels very plausible in that sense. The whole sequence we've had in Act 2 of his extended death scene, he's not going to die, is... and it's basically got to come out of nowhere. I mean, this is why when he comes on saying, is he carried to prison? I'm going, hang on, what? It's just you're dying? What? Hang on, where did any of this has not been signposted at all. It's come from nowhere. So structurally, I have a few issues now as we're going into this. If the plot sort of, it's not ground to a halt, but it's like there's a lot of stuff happening around, not a lot of plot, actually. Donald, any final thoughts?
I mean, I'm really enjoying it, and it's nice that so much of it is familiar, and then suddenly, like you say, you just get these sudden surprises, like with Aurelia on the end of that first speech of hers. Where on earth did that come from? So yeah, it's earning its keep, I think. Definitely.
Yeah, but Aurelia, as I say, hasn't really gone anywhere yet, and I'm wondering, and that's why I'm asking this question, because Lucia sort of disappeared a bit, and it's like at the point when I'm really wondering if there's a doubling thing that is slightly messing up the structure of what some of these characters are doing, that they just don't have enough people who do the ladies, as it were. I don't know if that is true or not. Anyway, Connor, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it, surprisingly. yeah, it's moving on at a really good pace, and yeah, the characters are fantastic. They're really funny. But I even quite like the young loves. I just think they're kind of two young teenagers fooling around in the bedroom kind of thing.
Mm.
And, they're quite sweet, I think, at the moment. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more this week.
Yes, let's stand up for young lovers. Let them be soppy. It's a palate cleanser of all these horrible men. I mean, they're very witty, horrible men, but they are really quite horrible. And we shouldn't get away from that point that they do go off on one in ways that, in a comedy, might lower the temperature of the room a bit. So we've got to be a bit careful about that.
I think it's
especially
a nice contrast with that, with the young lovers. It's the language and everything else, just a nice contrast to the slightly cynical old men.
Yeah. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm gonna be negative Nelly because anyway, I'm just in a grouchy mood today. So yeah, the horribleness of the male characters, Dogrel and Cutter and Blade, is kind of grating on me this morning. They would have to be very charming in performance not to get tedious. It's just like, you and your misogyny and your alcoholism. Maybe I'm not amused. So yeah, I mean, really, yeah. So I'm just not able to take it as lightly, I think, as your audience would need to. That's a me problem. But structurally, it is really interesting. Aurelia is quite the spanner in the works, and ages ago we read a play with a deposed king who had 3 daughters and a usurper who had 3 sons. It's like you can tell from scene 2 how things are going to work out, and you can't with this. I mean, there's Aurelia, who we can't decide whether she's a good person or not, but she is a young, marriage-eligible young woman. And we have Tabytha, who is a desirable young woman, and Lucia, so we have 3 young women and really only 1 young man, Truman, who's not just awful. So, like, how are the pairings going to work out? Is a question. I can't see that, and that's sort of interesting that it's so structurally complicated that it's not predictable. So that's something to say for it.
Yeah. Susan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, very good point, Lynn. And isn't it interesting that there's two out of the 3 are being played by women today? And may there be more of that out there in the real world. There's too many plays with like all these heavy men. Anyway, I think this is really fresh, really funny, and it's all in the moment. And I don't think it's a repeated thing, Alan. I think it's it really works this because it's happening in the moment as good acting should be.
And Sarah, any final thoughts?
Yes, I have to say, until you started talking about it towards the end there with Alan, I'd actually forgotten that this was a university play. It feels far more like a city comedy, and a playwright who really knows what they're talking about. We mentioned Ben Jonson. It doesn't quite feel like a Ben Jonson, but it feels like someone of that sort of ilk. I'm really enjoying it. I find the young lovers quite interesting, actually, because on the one hand, I will admit I found them quite tedious, but then they have actually tried to poison her guardian. From what I can gather, I mean, we haven't exactly had it sorted out yet, but from the gaps that the characters have filled in, it sounds as though they have colluded with this doctor in order to poison Blade, and then they come to him like on his deathbed, like, oh, are you going to give us? Are you going to give us your blessing now you're on your deathbed? And he's like, no, you tried to poison me. You're off to prison. So they're not above a bit of skullduggery too, really. They're not as innocent as, and I don't think they actually meant to kill him, but like they're clearly not above, being a bit dodgy themselves. So it's really interesting. There is no kind of fixed moral compass in this point, unless maybe Tabytha and her mother. Maybe, but like all these characters are a little bit shady, which I'm really enjoying. I am actually also really enjoying this thing of like not knowing what's happening, like being launched into scenes, like when Blade is complaining about the doctor and then not finding out till afterwards what is actually going on. We had this in a play the other week, and I can't remember if it was from this particular point in time or whether it was earlier, because I can't remember what date it was, but I said at the time it feels like a very modern thing to be let loose in a scene and then to find out afterwards what's going on, and I really enjoy that. And it's not like you don't find out fairly quickly what's going on, because you do, the information gets filled in afterwards by various characters talking. So I don't know, I think it's really clever, and I actually really like the structure. And I just hope the rest of it like lives up to the first third. I mean, Lynn's right. There's a lot of misogyny, but I think, as always with these plays, the misogynistic characters, the play stands or falls by how they end up, and we don't know yet how they're going to end up. But I'm prepared to bear with it until we find out what happens, because it's just very, very funny.
I should point out, we don't have proof that they have poisoned him. He just says that they must have done.
True. True.
I'd be delighted if they did. I think that would be fascinating. I don't necessarily. I don't think he's ill. I think he's just got indigestion and a hangover. He's just. But it does raise all sorts of interesting questions, and we'll see what the play gives us next time. Definitely says you've done that, but poisoned. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Dogrel does say that they saw the physician with Mistress Lucia and Truman consulting all together, and that the physician plucked a box out, showed it them. They seemed to approve an oath of secrecy we heard them take, but suspected nothing by this hand. So, Dogrel might be lying, but it hasn't.
Or it's entirely innocent and it's got nothing.
True.
We don't know. All we've had is a report of a thing and an accusation. And of course, it could all be a lie. It could be that Blade is doing this to, as part of his gambit to make sure she marries who she wants. This gives them an excuse to lock him away and bend them to his will. So there's all sorts of potential gambits that are going off this particular part of the plot, of which I'm not going to make any firm decisions about at this time. Any other thoughts before I close the session? Well, it's going down. It's full of bounce and life and wit, and the Abraham will continue writing and doing things over the next 20 odd years, and this play will return in the restoration outside of our remit. I'm quite curious to have a little look to see what changes he made. Whether he made any, I assume he would have made some. I suspect the female parts will be bigger with actual actresses in place. That'd be interesting to see what the difference would be there. That's somebody else's project, but we shall see. Anyway, till next time, when we find out what happens in the middle of the play. All that remains to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye, that damned urinal monger.